Have you ever wondered what happens when kindness meets cruelty in the most unexpected places? A millionaire asked his daughter to choose a new mother from among 5 wealthy women, but he chose the black cleaning lady when he discovered the truth about who really took care of the girl. "That woman shouldn't even be in the same room as us," Victoria Ashworth whispered to the other candidates as she watched Kesha Williams silently clean up the crystal shards on the marble floor of the Blackwood mansion. The glass had been accidentally knocked over during lunch by the 5 socialites competing to become the new wife of millionaire widower David Blackwood. Kesha, 28, had been working at the imposing Atlanta mansion for only 3 months, but she had already completely transformed the life of 7-year-old Emma, who had lost her mother in a car accident the previous year. What the candidates didn't know was that every cruel word, every look of contempt, every attempt of humiliation was being carefully observed by someone who kept secrets far deeper than they could imagine. "Daddy, why are those women being mean to Kesha?" Emma asked that morning, hiding behind David's office door. His daughter's innocent question echoed in the businessman's mind as he watched through the security cameras. Kesha being humiliated by the 5 candidates who had arrived 2 weeks earlier to participate in his marriage competition. The idea had come from his therapist: allow Emma to live with different women for a month and choose who she would like to be her new mother. David had carefully selected 5 women from high society: a lawyer, a doctor, a businesswoman, a socialite, and an architect, all white, all rich, all seemingly perfect on paper. But from day one, something disturbing began to happen. The 5 women, led by the cruel Victoria Ashworth, heiress to an oil fortune, had declared a silent war against Kesha. Not because she was a threat, after all, she was just the cleaning lady, but because Emma clearly preferred to spend time with her than with any of the candidates. Can you imagine the shock when the truth unraveled? "That girl needs to learn about social hierarchy early on," declared Priscilla Montgomery, the lawyer, during a dinner party when they thought they were alone. "It's important that she understands who the appropriate people are for her social class." What they didn't know was that David had installed microphones throughout the house after noticing strange changes in Emma's behavior. The girl, who was finally starting to smile again, had returned to having nightmares and anxiety attacks. Kesha, who had a degree in education but was working as a cleaner to support her sick mother, never imagined that her natural kindness towards Emma would trigger such cruelty. Every morning while preparing breakfast, she heard poisonous comments about people who don't know their place and inappropriate influences for children from good families. But there was something none of the 5 candidates noticed. In Kesha's eyes shone a quiet determination forged by years of facing prejudices far worse than these. And when she bowed her head in the face of insults, it was not in submission, it was pure strategy from someone who had learned that the best revenge comes to those who know how to wait for the right moment. If you're enjoying this story of how prejudice can turn against the prejudiced, don't forget to subscribe to Black Voices, because what these women didn't know was that their days of humiliating Kesha were numbered, and their downfall would be far more spectacular than any of them could have imagined. The photos spread across social media in a matter of minutes. #Princessa Richardson slumming was already trending on Twitter before Isabella had even finished her last piece of cake. Thomas Richardson burst through the cafe door like a storm in a $3,000 suit. "Isabella, what the hell do you think you're doing?" His face was red with rage as he watched his daughter still sitting at the table with David and Sophia. The little girl, frightened by the loud voice, hid behind her father. "I'm celebrating my birthday, Dad, something you forgot to do for the last 2 years," Isabella replied with a calmness that surprised even her. "Not with me. Not with these people." Thomas practically spat the words, his eyes fixed on David with a kind of contempt that only billionaires reserve for those they consider inferior. David rose slowly, his dignity intact despite the public humiliation. "Come on, Sophia. We've caused enough trouble." "No," Isabella said firmly, surprising everyone by blocking the exit with her wheelchair. "You haven't bothered anyone. In fact, you're the only people who remembered it's my birthday." The sentence cut through the air like a knife. Thomas felt the weight of the other customers' curious glances, all discreetly recording with their cell phones. "We'll talk about this at home," he growled through clenched teeth. But social media had already taken over the narrative. In less than an hour, the hashtag had evolved into #RichardsonRacist, with users sharing theories about the real reason behind the billionaire's fury. Back at the penthouse apartment, Thomas unleashed all his pent-up anger. Do you have any idea how much damage you've done to our image? The company's stock is already down 2%. Isabella watched her father pace back and forth in his office filled with awards and certificates, all celebrating his philanthropy and commitment to diversity. Hypocrite, she muttered. What did you say? I said, you're a hypocrite. You donate millions to charities that help underprivileged communities. You pose for photos with black children in hospitals, but you can't stand your own daughter being kind to a real black family. Thomas stopped abruptly. This has nothing to do with race. It has to do with social standing, with propriety. That man was clearly taking advantage of you. Isabella laughed bitterly. Taking advantage? He sang happy birthday to me, Dad, something you haven't done since before my accident. The word accident hung in the air like an accusation. Thomas had avoided the subject for 2 years, as if ignoring it could make the wheelchair disappear. This is different, and you know it. It's different because now I'm an embarrassment. A disabled daughter doesn't fit your image as a powerful CEO. Thomas looked away, unable to deny it directly. I'm hiring new security guards, and you won't be going out alone anymore. You can't lock me up here forever. Yes, I can, and I will. Meanwhile, across town, David faced his own consequences. His phone rang incessantly, journalists wanting statements, activists offering support, and mostly threatening calls from unknown numbers. Daddy, why are people mad because we sang happy birthday? Sophia asked, watching the news on television. David turned off the TV and knelt next to his daughter. Because some people are afraid of kindness when it comes from people who don't look like them. But what Thomas Richardson didn't know was that his daughter had inherited more than just his last name. During years of forced isolation, Isabella had developed a secret network of contacts, investigative journalists, activist hackers, disgruntled employees from her father's own company. She had been gathering evidence for months, discriminatory emails, recordings of executive meetings, suspicious contracts that showed the true character of philanthropist Thomas Richardson. That night, while Thomas celebrated handling the situation with his PR team, Isabella typed silently on her laptop. Each word she typed was one step closer to a vindication her father would never see coming. The man who had underestimated her for 2 years, treating her like a broken doll on display, was about to discover that he had created his own worst nightmare. While Thomas thought he had silenced his problematic daughter, something much more powerful was brewing in the silence of that apartment, a storm that would prove that underestimating someone because of their physical condition can be the biggest strategic mistake an arrogant man can make. 3 days after the coffee incident, as Thomas had come to refer to the episode, Isabella discovered that her personal bank accounts had been frozen. Her car keys had also mysteriously disappeared. It's for your own good, Thomas declared over breakfast, not even deigning to look at his daughter until this social media hysteria blows over. You're staying here. Isabella watched her father calmly read his financial newspaper as if he hadn't just imprisoned her in her own home. And how long do you think this will last? As long as necessary. I've already hired a crisis management company. In a few weeks, no one will remember this farce. What Thomas didn't know was that Isabella had learned to be invisible long before the accident. For years, she had silently observed business meetings at home, absorbing information that her father assumed she didn't know. When she became paraplegic, this invisibility only intensified. People talked in front of her as if she didn't exist. That afternoon, while Thomas was participating in a video conference in his office, Isabella discreetly connected to the corporate Wi-Fi network using a laptop he didn't know she owned. His passwords were pathetic, the company name followed by the year. She typed in a memorized email address, alexandra.zinn@investigativejournalism.org. Alex, it's Bella. It's time. The reply came in less than 5 minutes. Finally. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. Do you have everything? Isabella smiled for the first time in days. Alexandra Torres was an award-winning investigative journalist who had tried to expose Richardson Tech on several occasions, always being blocked by expensive lawyers and political influence. They had met by chance at a lecture on disability rights, where Isabella, furious at her father's empty platitudes, had discreetly passed on information about the company's real practices. Meanwhile, David faced an increasingly bleak reality. He had lost 2 potential jobs in the last week, both after last-minute background checks. His landlord had received anonymous calls questioning his financial stability. Sophia had come home from school asking why some mothers were whispering about them. "Daddy, did we do something wrong?" she asked that night as David helped her with her homework at the makeshift kitchen table. David closed his eyes for a moment. "No, sweetheart. Sometimes powerful people get angry when other people are kind." The phone rang again. David answered silently, expecting another threat, but this time it was a different female voice. "Mr. Williams, my name is Alexandra Torres. I'm a journalist. I'd like to talk to you about what happened at the cafe. I'm not interested in talking to the press. I understand your concern, but I'm not like the others. I have information that could completely change this situation, and I have reason to believe that your family is in real danger." David hesitated. "What kind of danger?" "The kind that men like Thomas Richardson create when they feel threatened." "I can be at your house in an hour." Meanwhile, in the penthouse apartment, Thomas was in an emergency meeting with his crisis management team. The room was filled with expensive lawyers and public relations experts. "The situation is under control," reported Marcus Webb, his communications director. "We've gotten 3 major influencers to post subtle criticisms of the Williams family's opportunism. The narrative is shifting. What about my competitors? Are they taking advantage of this? Some ironic comments about corporate social responsibility, but nothing that will jeopardize contracts." Thomas nodded with satisfaction. "And my daughter isolated and without access to resources. The problem is contained." At that very moment, 3 floors below, Isabella was uploading her latest acquisition audio recordings of 5 years of executive meetings where Thomas and his team openly discussed strategies to optimize poor communities through forced gentrification, manipulation of government contracts, and even sabotage of smaller competitors. Her phone vibrated with a message from Alexandra. "Got it. This is pure gold. Are you sure you want to do this? There's no turning back once we publish." Isabella typed her reply without hesitation. "My father has underestimated me my entire life. It's time he found out the price of that." That night, while Thomas celebrated what he considered a complete victory over his daughter's problem in his office, Isabella finished organizing 2 years of meticulously collected evidence, discriminatory emails, fraudulent contracts, compromising recordings, and financial documents that would reveal a systemic pattern of corruption and prejudice. The man who had locked her in her home, thinking he had silenced his problem daughter, was about to discover that he had created the time and space for her to orchestrate his own destruction. Thomas Richardson had made the fatal mistake of underestimating someone who had spent 2 years learning that real power does not come from bank accounts or car keys, but from devastating information in the hands of someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The article was published at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, exactly when Thomas usually reviewed the financial news with his Colombian coffee. The headline on the homepage of the country's largest investigative news portal made his cup shake in his hands. "Empire of Hypocrisy: How Philanthropist Thomas Richardson Built His Fortune by Destroying Black Communities." Thomas clicked on the link with trembling fingers. The first thing he saw was a high-resolution photo of himself during an executive meeting, clearly taken without his knowledge. Below was the transcript of an audio recording where his own voice echoed with crystal clarity. "These people don't know the real value of the land. We offer them crumbs, they take them, we make millions. It's capitalism working perfectly." His stomach dropped. That meeting had taken place 3 years earlier in his private office. How on earth had someone recorded it? He frantically scrolled down, finding document after document proving years of manipulation of government contracts, kickbacks to city inspectors, and deliberate strategies to force low-income families to sell their properties for a pittance. Worst of all were the emails, hundreds of them, all with his authentic digital signature, openly discussing how to clean up entire neighborhoods through aggressive gentrification. In one address to the mayor, he had written, "We need to speed up the removal process before these people get organized. Offer them ridiculous compensation and use whatever pressure is necessary to get them to accept." Thomas rushed to his home office, his legs wobbly. Marcus, he shouted to his communications director. Have you seen this? How did they get these files? Marcus Webb was pale, his laptop open to the same article. Mr. Richardson, this is devastating. We have evidence of dozens of financial crimes here. And the recordings, the quality is perfect. Where did these recordings come from? Thomas was yelling now, his usual composure completely shattered. It was then that Marcus pointed to a small detail at the end of the article, a discreet footnote that read, "Special thanks to the anonymous source who provided evidence collected over 2 years of systematic documentation." 2 years. Thomas felt the blood drain from his face. 2 years was exactly how long it had been since Isabella's accident. At that moment, his daughter appeared in the office doorway, her wheelchair gliding silently across the Italian marble. She was holding a tablet, a serene smile on her face. "Good morning, Dad. Did you see the news?" Thomas stared at her in utter shock. "You? Was that you? For 2 years, you treated me like a broken decorative object. You talked in front of me as if I were invisible. You attended meetings in the next room, thinking I couldn't hear you," Isabella spoke with frightening calm. "You forgot that before the accident, I had a degree in business and always paid attention to your business. Isabella, you don't understand the consequences." "I understand perfectly. So much so that I've already sent copies of everything to the federal prosecutor's office, the Internal Revenue Service, and the FBI." She paused, watching her father's face crumble. "Oh, and I also sent everything to David Williams." "You remember him? That inferior man who sang Happy Birthday with me? He has a degree in computer science from MIT and is a specialist in digital security. He helped authenticate all the evidence." Thomas staggered, leaning on the table. "You ruined everything. The company, our family, our reputation. I fixed everything. For years, you built an empire based on destroying the dreams of people like David. Entire families lost their homes because of your greed disguised as philanthropy." Thomas's phone rang incessantly, shareholders, lawyers, journalists, all wanting explanations for what was already being called the biggest corporate scandal of the decade. That afternoon, Richardson tech stock plummeted 87%. Government contracts were suspended. The board of directors called an emergency meeting to discuss Thomas's immediate removal as president. Meanwhile, Isabella received a call from David. "The article changed everything," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "3 companies offered me jobs today. Sophia was right all along. You really are special. David, there's something I need to tell you. At the cafe, when you and Sophia sang Happy Birthday to me, I already knew who you were. I had researched you after my father showed me such contempt. I found out about your background, your potential, everything he refused to see. And you still wanted to be friends? Especially because of that. You showed me that dignity is priceless. And I wanted you to know that not every Richardson is a monster." That night, while Thomas faced his first night in prison after being arrested for racketeering and money laundering, Isabella had dinner with David and Sophia at a family restaurant. For the first time in 2 years, she felt truly free. Thomas Richardson had spent his life underestimating people he considered inferior, a blind arrogance that blinded him to the fact that he had created his own destruction by turning the daughter he despised into the architect of his most spectacular downfall. 6 months later, Thomas Richardson looked through the bars of his federal prison cell, contemplating the headlines that had destroyed any chance of redemption. Former Richardson Tech CEO sentenced to 15 years for criminal conspiracy and money laundering. The company he had built over 3 decades was now under new management. The board of directors had unanimously approved the appointment of Isabella Richardson as the new CEO, a decision that would have been unthinkable just a year earlier when she was seen as the problem child confined to a wheelchair. "Dad," Isabella entered the prison visiting room, her posture radiating a confidence Thomas had never seen before. "I came to show you something." She placed a tablet on the table displaying the company's quarterly financial report. Profit is up 42% in the last 6 months. Do you know why? Thomas remained silent, his wounded pride preventing him from asking. "Because we stopped spending spending millions trying to cover up crimes, and started investing in real social programs. We hired David Williams as our new director of social responsibility. You remember him, don't you? The mention of the name made Thomas clench his fists. That man doesn't understand anything about corporate business. Isabella laughed, a genuine sound Thomas hadn't heard in years. He understands dignity, treating people like human beings. Something you never learned. She slid her finger across the screen, showing photos of new projects. We're funding affordable housing in the same communities you tried to destroy. We've created a $15 million fund for reparations to the families you hurt. You're destroying my life's work, Thomas muttered, his voice breaking. I'm saving what's left of it. The company has never been stronger or more respected. Isabella paused, studying her father's defeated face. Do you know what my first act as CEO was? I established a full scholarship program for young people from disadvantaged communities to study technology. We already have 200 applicants. That same day, across town, David Williams occupied an office on the executive floor of Richardson Tech, something that 6 months ago would have been completely impossible. Sophia played in the corner of the room with colorful building blocks, occasionally running to the window to watch the city bustle below. Daddy, can I meet Bella today? Sophia asked, using the affectionate nickname she had given Isabella. Of course, sweetheart. She said she has a surprise for you. The surprise was bigger than David could have imagined. Isabella had created a pilot music education program for children from low-income families, inspired by the passion for music she had observed in Sophia during their conversations at the cafe. The city's first community conservatory would open in the former building of one of the properties Thomas had illegally confiscated, now returned to the community as a cultural center. You really didn't have to do this, David said that afternoon as they watched Sophia try out different instruments in the newly built studio. Yes, I did. For 2 years, you reminded me that kindness exists even when all seems lost. Now I want hundreds of other children to have the opportunities my father tried to deny them. Isabella's transformation was complete. The young woman who had been considered a public relations problem now appeared regularly in Forbes and Fortune as one of the most innovative CEOs of her generation. Her wheelchair was no longer seen as a limitation. On the contrary, it became a symbol that true leadership comes from the ability to overcome obstacles and create opportunities for others. 3 years after their meeting at the cafe, Isabella and David were married in a simple but meaningful ceremony. The venue was the same conservatory they had created together, now flourishing with more than 500 children enrolled. Sophia, now 8, was the flower girl, wearing a dress she had chosen herself. During the ceremony, Isabella gave a speech that would be remembered by everyone present. 3 years ago, my father told me I would never be anything but a deadweight to my family. Today, I run a company worth $2 billion. I am married to the most honest man I have ever known, and I have a daughter who teaches me every day that love knows no barriers. She paused, looking at the audience filled with families who had benefited from the company's new social programs. Sometimes the people who try hardest to tear us down are the ones who inspire us to rise up. Thomas, still serving his sentence, learned of the wedding through a letter Isabella sent him. It wasn't a taunt or humiliation. It was an invitation to reflect. If you ever want to meet your granddaughter without prejudice or judgment, our door is open, but only when you understand that dignity has no color, social class, or physical limitations. Thomas's response arrived 2 weeks later, a single handwritten line on prison paper. I am proud of the woman you have become despite me. 5 years after that chance encounter at the cafe, Richardson Tech had become a global benchmark in corporate social responsibility. David led a team of 50 people dedicated exclusively to community programs. Isabella was regularly invited to speak at international conferences on inclusive leadership and overcoming adversity. Sophia, now 10, played the violin at the conservatory named after her, a tribute from her stepmother to the child who had planted the first seed of kindness in a moment of complete loneliness. The cafe where it all began was still open, but now it displayed a discreet sign on the corner table, Table of Kindness, in memory of an encounter that changed lives. It was a reminder that simple acts of humanity can bring about extraordinary transformations. Thomas was released from prison at the age of 71, a completely different man. His first stop was the conservatory, where he found Sophia rehearsing for a recital. She looked at him curiously, without resentment. "Are you my Bella's grandfather?" "I am," he replied, his voice heavy with emotion. "And you are Sophia. Would you like to hear my song?" "My Bella," said music heals broken things. As the first chords filled the air, Thomas finally understood the lesson that had taken him decades to learn. True power does not come from tearing others down, but from lifting them up. His daughter had transformed his legacy of destruction into an empire of hope. Isabella Richardson proved that the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's building something so beautiful and meaningful that it renders all the cruelty they tried to inflict on you irrelevant. She didn't just overcome the limitations others tried to impose on her. She completely redefined what it means to be strong, successful, and truly powerful. Isabella's story teaches us that when arrogant people underestimate our ability to grow, they inadvertently give us the fuel to become exactly what they could never be: genuinely extraordinary. If this journey of transformation and justice has inspired you, subscribe to Black Voices for more stories that prove that our greatest strength is born in the moments when others try to convince us that we are weak.